video, we're going to look at the Beth Bachmann poems from Temper. I'll show you Beth Bachmann Temper. Here's the book. Um, and it's about her sister's uh, murder. We'll get into this a little bit. There's the main poem from that. There's the book right there. Oh, okay. And there's a series of poems here. I included 8. We're not going to have time to like close read all of them line for line and word for word like we do some others. So I'm just going to touch upon some of the main things in each one. And some of the questions I'm going to ask you, here it is. Temper is about Bachmann's sister's murder, and their father was a suspect. And here are a couple of interviews where Bachmann talks about it. I think it's important to look at them, check them out. One in National Review, one in Jet Fuel Review. There's Beth Bachmann. I'm wondering why poetry? Why this book to look at her sister's murder? I'm fascinated with that because you would think, if you all listen to your murder podcast, why wouldn't this be a book of nonfiction? Why wouldn't this be a book of something else? What is Bachmann trying to do? What is she hungry for? Back to the themes of our class. What does she want? I'm curious about that. It's not closure, because there's going to be a poem where there's no closure. What does she want? So here is the first poem. Here's Bachmann reading it. All right.
The word for a line with a series of hooks also means the recitation of a prayer. But in our case, a paternoster is shaped by the weight it holds at its end. The leader and the link are determined by the shyness of the bite. Reeling it toward you piques the bait. Move closer. I want to tell you a story. It has its blood knots, its changing water, the usual lures, family, violence, a margin left bare for interpretive remark. It's not easy, even with this sinker, to go below the surface, to ask you to offer me your open throat. I'll start with a thing dragged up, the body of my sister. I'll give you the location, the tracks, the red treble designed to mock blood, to stick into the skin. One suspect, our father. Put this begging in your mouth, a decade of loaded beads.
There's Bachmann reading it. Paternoster, it has a double meaning. It could be a lift. Lift is a passenger elevator which consists of a chain of open compartments that move slowly in a loop. So this is moving slowly in a loop here. This lift, like an elevator, it's like a lift. It goes up and down. The other meaning is the Lord's Prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We all know that, right? So we have the double meanings for the title. And let's look at what's going on here. This is the first poem in the volume. The word for a line with a series of hooks also means the recitation of a prayer. There's the double meanings. But in our case, a paternoster is shaped by the weight it holds at its end. And we have this imagery. The leader and the link are determined by the shyness of the bite. There's this like fishing imagery throughout. Reeling it toward you piques the bait. Reeling, bait. I'm fascinated with the part of the poem here. It's almost like the speaker, Bachmann, is addressing us, the reader. Move closer. She asks us to move closer. I want to tell you a story. What is this? What's the effect of this for the project of the book? dealing with her sister's murder. She wants us to kind of join in, move closer. I want to tell you a story. It has its blood knots, its changing water, the usual lures as in fishing and luring us in, the family, violence, a margin left bare for interpretive remark. We don't know what happened. We don't know how this took place. We don't know what happened. It's not easy, the project of the book and this poem, to go below the surface. Are these poems an attempt to go below the surface? To ask you to offer me your open throat? I'll start with the thing dragged up, the body of my sister. Here's Bachmann's sister. I'll give you the location, the tracks. The red table designed to mock blood to stick into the skin. One suspect, our father. And we have the double meanings there. We have our father, Bachmann and her sisters, and then the prayer, our Father who art in heaven, right? Put this begging in your mouth. What's this begging? Please let this not be true. Please, I wish this didn't happen. A decade of loaded beads. Is that the rosary? So, and I'm fascinated as well. We looked at the other poems, the form and style. The form and style of these poems, we have a line, a couple lines. There's a lot of white space. It's fragmented. It's jagged. It's not a complete story. It's not a complete picture. So we'll move on. The next poem is pretty short. First mystery of my sister. He unleashed the dog and waited, plastic bag in hand. Sparky barked, nosed along the tracks, into the no man's property between station line and road. Commuters numbered against the windows watched the nodding thistle shiver as the 642 lunged toward the city. Overgrowth, long fingers of grass, the bud of a doll tattoo. What remains? Her tagged body. The dog at dawn sniffing a greening rose. So we have the police here, searching, looking. The images, again, we have 8 lines. Short, it's an incomplete story. So if the police are looking, we have the body again. What's the poet, the speaker, looking for? What does the poet speaker want here? We're trying to piece together, how could a thing like this happen? Right? This horrible murder, this horrible situation. And in some ways, if the speaker is a poet, they're trying to make sense of it in the only way they know how. Knowing it the whole time as well that I can't make sense of it. So there's this move toward art. And this might also refer back to the first question in the discussion boards. What can poetry do? What's it for? How's it working in this situation? Who's it for? Right? We have these poems, these fragmented poems. Let's move to the next one. Last call. I'm fascinated with the repetition here. Last call, the multiple meanings. Last call at the bar. This is also the sister's last call, the daughter's last call. Come get me. A father in his nightshirt. A daughter on the end of the line calling for a pickup. A father in his nightshirt, in his stick shift, switches gears. The pickup pulls up to the train station. His stick shift switches gears. She's not there. He pulls up to the train station bar, the cigarette machine, payphone. She's not there. He drops change at the bar, the cigarette machine, payphone. In the freight yard, a body drops. Change crosses over a face in the freight yard. A body's last words cross over a face. A daughter at the end of the line, calling last words. Come get me. Bare, straightforward language in this poem. There's the repetition playing over and over. The speaker, Bachmann, maybe in her mind, what happened? Could I have done anything? The repetition here, playing it over and over. Here's the father. What's the father do? There's all these gaps, all these missing pieces. We don't know what's going on. And I think we have, the stick shift. She's not there. Come get me are the first words. Come get me are the last words. This is the last call. And in between here, the repetition, I think the poet is trying to piece together what perhaps happened. We don't know. Another poem, Second Mystery of My Sister. It's impossible to define force, but it's not hard to figure the size of an arrow drawn in a diagram of the free body. Blunt entry. These cannot be measured like the integrity of a wing. If you think of a torso as a box, you can see how someone might want to open it with his fingers. A brutal poem here, right? We get this idea of someone opening the torso like a box with their fingers. We have the second mystery of my sister. It's impossible to define force, but it's not hard to figure the size of an arrow. Blunt entry. So the speaker is almost piecing together information, piecing together clues here. Sirens. Almost nothing can be destroyed by a voice. What do you think of that? Is that true? I've gotten in arguments with classes before about this. Well, let's read the poem first, and we can argue. Almost nothing can be destroyed by a voice. No matter how beautiful, it's no weapon. Don't believe me? Watch my mouth form the words, knife hand or hammer fist. Still standing? Now come here. I want to teach you this trick my father picked up. A blow to the back of the ear, hit and stick. The sirens scatter. One of us is too wrecked to rush. Is this true? You know, what's the phrase we hear as children? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Is that true? Almost nothing can be destroyed by a voice, no matter how beautiful. And we have this, and we have language here. One of us is too wrecked to rush. There's the shock at the ending, the sublimity, sublime. What to do? You know, is this the father? Is this also Bachmann here? What can we do? Words. What are words at the end of the day? I mean, this is where we can get an argument. Words can hurt. It's not like someone physically hurting you, though, right? And think of this, and I think Bachmann is differentiating this while also trying to make various meanings through these words here. Mystery ending with a girl in a field. You've heard it before, but listen. I brought you into this world. I can take you out of it. I know what you're thinking. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Nothing's resolved, but what does it matter? I could snap these petals off all day, mouthing, he loves me not. Have any of your parents ever said this to you? I brought you into this world, I could take you out of it. It's said in jest, like a joke. It takes on different resonances and horrific meanings in the context of this book of poems and this poem. I know what you're thinking, the reader. We're involved. Remember Pater Noster, come close and listen. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. And here's a big crux of the book as well, these poems. Nothing's resolved. There's no closure. But what does it matter anyway? Even it's not going to bring my sister back. It's not going to bring her sister back. And it's not only like the speaker poet lost a sister. They lost a father regardless of what happened. You know, their lives are shattered. Relationships are different. But what does it matter? It doesn't, because we can't go back, no matter how bad we want to a time before. I could snap these petals all day, mouthing, he loves me not. We got two more to look at, Cold Logic, and quickly, I mean, we're just quickly breezing through these poems. I think having watched these videos and looked at some of the tactics, you could spend time on your own close reading and looking at these. Cold Logic. We love a thing we cannot know. This is what stops us from touching, but also what cannot stop us from touching a body even after it's cold. Some call it continuous, this mystery. I keep coming back to the grass that grows near dumpsters, that startles my leg after dusk. In the black bag is the fruit I bought and did not eat, so soft against the knife it wasn't worth saving, the way it did not part to speak or run. We love a thing we cannot know, and we have the contradiction in here. It stops us from touching, but also what cannot stop us from touching. A body, even after it's cold. The speaker, I keep coming back to the grass that grows near dumpsters. Is this the scene of the crime that startles my leg after dusk? Finally, we're looking at other ideas of the elegy, and this is the final. So these 8 poems were different poems throughout the book, and you can buy the book and read it all. We read the first one. This is the final poem in the book, Elegy. No shepherds, no nymphs, maybe just one. The girl the fawn strips like a fisherman's rose. Death turns its mouth red. It can no longer lie in the lilies, not on my watch. The lake is filthy with the silver fish, sticky with leeches. Lovesick, I flick a feather into the water. No stones, only the one in my pocket, heavy as a tongue. After we hear the story and you've read a little bit about it, this is an odd way to end the book. There's no closure. No shepherds, no nymphs, maybe just one. And this helps if you go back to our friends Eliot and Bloom, the idea of illusion. What this poem is doing, it's referencing this Andrew Marvell poem here, The Nymph Complaining for the Death of Her Fawn. And we're not going to close read this whole thing, but this is what that elegy is referring to. The nymph, the fawn here, and you see this poem. No nymphs in this elegy. The girl the fawn strips like a fisherman's rose. Death turns its mouth red. It can no longer lie in the lilies. I like this phrase, not on my watch. You know, think of that phrase, not on my watch. What is the speaker doing? It's almost like it's a sad combativeness. Not on my watch. I'm dealing with these things. The lake is filthy with the silverfish sticky with leeches. Lovesick. I flick a feather into the water. No stones. Only the one in my pocket, heavy as a tongue. So there's not on my watch, but there's still this stone in her pocket, heavy as a tongue, weighing her down. So we have these 8 short, fragmented, elliptical poems, dealing with the death of her sister, the father as a suspect. We looked at a number of images and moves in the poems. We're not getting a closure here. Why is Bachmann writing these? What do you think? This is her way of dealing with it. It's her own private way, but they're out there for us to read as well. I think they're powerful in their fragmented nature, their attention to space, white space, line, image, and detail throughout.